Hey everybody, Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got Kimberly Scott, and we're going to be talking about taking back control of your life and gaining alignment. Before we get into that, Kimberly, tell us where people can get hold of you.
You can find me often, probably in a space on Twitter Spaces. So I'm on Twitter under Dear Kimberly K. I host weekly shows over there. Most other places, that's where you can find me as well. That's my @ symbol, Dear Kimberly K. My website for coaching is notabasiclife.com.
Fantastic. Just tell us a little bit about your journey, because you've been on quite a journey, haven't you, in your life?
Yeah, I get this phrase all the time where people say, I feel like you've lived 1,000 lives. And I'm like, I feel like I've lived 1,000 lives, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I definitely have been on what I would call a journey. Sometimes it felt like multiple journeys, like at once, simultaneously, perhaps. I was born and raised in the South part of the United States. Mississippi and Arkansas is where I collectively was born and raised. And then I left pretty quickly, was like, I'm gone. I want to get out to college as soon as possible. I'm on the spectrum of autism, and there's a whole story around that for another time, but my mom didn't really understand what the doctors meant because of her lack of education. So she thought when they said autistic, she thought they said artistic. So
Okay.
for the longest, yeah, so the longest time, I didn't actually go diagnosed with that. So I lived my life very interesting in the way that even though I was, on the spectrum, my parents didn't know. My dad was a roofer, a carpenter, and my mom owned a cleaning business. So they just went about life as normal. And I think that led to these journeys for
And
me.
you got Lyme disease, didn't you, very early on as well?
Yes, yeah, exactly. So living, on the spectrum most of my life, not understanding like, why do I not have friends? Why do people find me weird or whatever? That made me have to go off these different paths, because a lot of times I'd have to find creative ways to get into something or to get around something. And then when I was 12, I contracted Lyme disease. It could have been before that, but that's where we sort of roughly placed the timing. And I did have about a summer where that was a hard experience, but it also I also had an abuse go on at the same time. So that time's kind of like cocooned together, and I do believe those were linked, which is why I talk about the harmony that we spoke of in our pre-interview, because I believe that the stress and the journeys and the things that we go on in life can really affect our mental, physical connection with our bodies. So yeah, Lyme disease at 12. I'm 40 now, so I've been like this on that journey, because it can come out of dormancy and back into remission. So I'm an advocate for awareness of Lyme disease, and primarily chronic Lyme, because it's not as seen as often by doctors, and it's just been recently accepted mostly in the UK and US and Germany. So for me, the being on the spectrum, growing up with parents who didn't have a lot of life skills to offer, except for maybe in the ways that they knew, passed down generationally, and then the Lyme disease, chronic disease, I would say, because there's others that piled on because of that one, has led to the journeys that I've had to go on, because you can't take a traditional route when those things come about. So lots of moments of near-death experiences, losing people close to me that had these chronic illnesses or mental health issues as well. So through those journeys, I started to think there's got to be a purpose to the pain side, that whole pain into purpose cliche. So that's the way I decided to look at it. Early in my 30s is when it finally started to click after a divorce. I have 2 children. They're about to graduate. They're 17 and 18.
Fantastic.
And thank you. Yeah. I wanted them to see me go on a different journey than the one that I was living when I had them. So that led to a lot of where I am now as well. I always have this phrase, but my kids are watching me. And that's what I kind of run through. Like, what are my kids going to say? Like, they're watching. So I kind of run things through that filter.
So you became a journalist, didn't you?
Yeah, so I went to high when I was in high school, they pulled a friend of mine pulled me out of a computer class. This was in the 90s, so we didn't really know how big computers were gonna be at the time, so I was like, "I don't know if that's a skill that I need." Corrected, underestimated that one, of course. But I jumped out of a computer class to join her journalism class because she didn't have very good writers, and she had read some of the poetry that I had been winning contests for, and also I'd given my friends gifts when I was in high school that were poems, and so she was like, "Oh, she can write." And it was primarily a selfish thing. She just wanted a good newspaper. So jumped into that. And that senior year, I got a lot of accolades for my writing, and was offered a full ride scholarship. So started college that way in journalism, got pregnant with my children when I got married, and paused that education for a little bit, but continued on with the journalism side. So wrote for lots of newspapers back when that was the thing. I'm old enough to remember when newspapers were the thing. They still are for me. But did that and then moved. I quickly saw that. So what we were talking about, the different life paths, and it's okay to have different ones and switching. I started to see the online path. I started to see this online journalism that was becoming popular, the blogging, the social media, probably in 2007 is when I started to see that. And I started to cross over into the blogging world. And I mixed blogging with DIY crafting as a stay-at-home mom. And I was also a Church of Jesus Christ. I was Latter-day Saint Mormon at the time. So there's a lot that just fit that lifestyle. So I moved from journalism into what we would call your modern sort of influencing blogging that you see today, which is what I manage with my company, influencers, content creators, that sort of thing. So I spent a lot of time doing that in different fields and industries. And that led me to many other things, shows, podcasts, many other things.
Because after we did the preparation call, I did some whole load of work in terms of looking you up, and so first thing I did was go to your Twitter, and on your pinned tweet is that there's an advert with a water company that's done of you, which is fantastic.
Yeah, that one. Whew, that was a universal moment for sure. That took a lot of overlapping coincidental people to meet and things and being in right places. So that one
And
thing led to many things.
yeah, and the other thing is that you going to your website, it's you've got such a massive following on social media, not just not just on things like LinkedIn, but you've got a Facebook page, haven't you?
Yeah. So early on, before Facebook fan pages started, so the ones that you see now that are for business, I was a single mom. I just went through a divorce, and I did not have any understanding of the world. Again, the spectrum of autism, and then being married for 8 years, it was a little bit like I was behind and stunted emotionally. So I only knew one thing, and I knew that Facebook was there. It was just in that transition of MySpace coming over to Facebook, and I had a camera, and people were asking me to take photos at the time, and I thought, if I can friend as many people as I can on this friend page and just get my photos in front of them, perhaps they will, it'll spark my photography career. It absolutely did. I just kept friending people, and the platform has changed over the years and how you can friend people and the limits. But I would just go to other people's pages and friend a bunch of people. And so I was featured on a show as the first single mom builds business solely on Facebook. And that then led to the media company, led to photography, led to a show. And people were really surprised that I did it just with the page, because it was a friend page. It wasn't like a professional fancy thing. So I do have the Facebook page. As we know, Facebook sort of killed fan pages in a sort of way for most of us. The engagement wasn't up. So I don't use that one as much. But during the time that fan pages were in their prime for Facebook, that was my sole area of marketing. And I used that page as like my website for 2 years. I didn't even have a website. My site now is highly privatized. There's courses and things on there that you couldn't see when you went over there because of the rebrand that's dropping. But I didn't have a website that whole time. The first 5 years, I didn't have a website. So I ran my companies and everything just through that Facebook fan page for about 4 or 5 years. And I'm very grateful that that was there at the time. And then moving to Instagram and now over to Twitter. Just even a year ago, I would not have thought Twitter would ever be a platform that I would have used. But this last year, it's been my most used one. So again, that
You're a big user of Twitter Spaces, aren't you? And the social audio functionality on there.
Yeah, like, I mean, we're sitting here right now and you're asking stories and questions, and I love that aspect. I love that part about people, is the curiosity we have for others, and or we should, about their story. And Twitter Spaces allows that for me, especially that journalistic brain. I noticed in your clip that you did put PopWrapped. I've moved on to another position, so I'm no longer with PopWrapped. So,
Okay.
but I didn't mind it staying there. But one of the things was that for Twitter Spaces, it sort of is a place where people have come to get their information or to learn or to share stories. And it can take on a journalistic nature, both good and bad, whatever information you want out there, right? Like any platform. But for Twitter Spaces, in my book, my approach has been to look at it from an interview perspective, like what you're doing here, and then also a sharing perspective, getting people that might not often feel like they could speak on a certain topic, or they don't want to start the conversation, but they may want to join. I bring in those harder topics at times, and give people that platform to come in and raise their hand virtually or figuratively, and then speak on their thoughts. So it's been a great experience. And Twitter has worked with my co-host and I on a lot of things, and we've had a lot of great experiences, put some books out and courses and things I would have never thought of. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I came across you because Keith Keller from Melbourne, I said I was looking for interesting people to interview, and he said his Twitter Spaces list of the top, I think it was 25 or 35 people in the world.
Yeah. That was a shock.
So, you're
yeah,
really,
that was.
Go on.
No, that was. I just woke up one day and saw that tagged on Twitter, and I was like, I would have never ever thought, a million years ago in social media, in all that I do, that I would be on a list of people to watch on Twitter, of all places, because I definitely still need to learn. Speaking of which, Keith is a perfect person I need to get in touch with and connect back with. I know he took vacation, holiday, so when we talked, so I need to check back in with him. But yeah, Twitter. There was a list that went out, and I was on that list. And I've struggled with that over the years. I think we spoke about that in the pre-interview journey, is that imposter syndrome that could keep us from shifting into other places at times. And I think age has brought a little bit of I don't know if it's bravery, I don't know if it's courage, or if it's just I don't really care as much, and
Yes,
so that's how that's happened with Twitter, is like, I was like, well, you know what? I don't care what people think. I'm gonna just try something over here. And it definitely worked out well. I don't know that I'm one of the top 25 people to watch on Spaces, but it's definitely an honor.
So you talked also about that you kind of made a big shift in your life about every 5 years.
Yes.
So talk us through
About every 3 to 5. So I've always been a curious person. I never really understood growing up why, my mom, this is just from my perspective, this isn't like a negative trait or anything.
Yeah.
For my mom, I never really understood, what was going on when it came down to, I guess, just the idea of her staying in this one particular place in her life. And I didn't really understand why, because I didn't understand limitations at the time. So because of her education, or because of just limitations in life, she had this cleaning business, and I saw her work so hard, and I thought, why does she have to stay in that one thing? And then when I was and she stayed in the one industry, cleaning homes, and it was, she brought us along, and we learned how to work hard at a young age. I'm being mindful of the time, so I'm going to be quick here. But I was in high school, and she had been taking payments at a car sales, one of those low income, low credit type places. And we had bought a lot of cars from there, and they one day they had a walkout of the car salesmen. They did like a strike because they knew they could ask for more money from the boss, because it was a really busy time. And the boss was like, the owner was like, I don't know what to do. Sharon, my mom, do you know how to sell cars? And she's like me. Yeah, sure. So she just ran out to the lot, and she ended up selling the most cars that month, and was employee of the month many times, and moved up, and then moved on to something else. And so it was in that moment that I was like, cliche, another cliche, we write our own destiny. We're not stuck with something, whether it be our chronic illness, our mental health, our family, our generational, our status, our financial, levels. We're not stuck there. So every 3 to 5 years for me, I believe this is my opinion, that stagnancy breeds this sort of death of creativity and vibrancy and vitality. And so I intuitively, about every 3 to 5 years, I'll feel this pull or this call to something else, and I'll ignore it every time. Just gonna be honest, and it'll get louder and louder, and it's come in the form of breakups. It's come in the form of failed businesses. That louder voice. It's come in the form of being robbed, even until I got the message. So now I listen a lot more intently and more quickly. I've learned to just go, okay, just give me a second, universe, God, whomever, whatever. Just give me a little bit. Let me ease into the idea of this next thing you want me to go into. And then other times it's a natural thing where someone asks me to do something and it just feels so right that right then I say yes, and then I'm on to another adventure. So yeah, that's sort of how it's gone for me. Yeah.
So one of the things that you also said was the difference between balance and harmony. You said that
that word.
people may never have balance, but they can have harmony. And the fact that, in fact, that people seem to be looking for this, looking for something they can't have in their lives.
Yeah. I hate taking this approach sometimes, but I'm going to stand by it. Balance is a lot harder than harmony, because balance is, if we think about a scale, you're always trying to get it perfectly right. So if we're thinking of balancing the scale, you have to put more on this side, take a little off of this side. Like, you're constantly trying to measure that. And if you're constantly focused on that, it's up here, up, down, up here, that's it. Even on a seesaw, like those things when we were younger, you got one person over here and they're trying to go up, and they're having to push to get the other person up, and then the other person has to push. So the balance is not an easy thing to achieve in most aspects of the word balance. So that's why I prefer harmony, because harmony is more of the idea of multiple things coexisting at once. Maybe sometimes certain aspects of your life may be more prevalent and take a more of a front seat, and then other things a back seat, but there's still that harmony. And I think it's something like, I'll attribute it to something like when you have a harmonizing group, a cappella group, you're going to have different parts. You've got the tenor, the bass, different things, and some might be louder and some might be quieter at times, but the mixture of all of those sounds, whether they're loud or whatever at times, is so beautiful. So I really try to achieve harmony, because the balance, if you try to balance people in a choir, is a good example. Say with the singing, you tell everybody to sing on the same level. That's a choir, right? Everybody's singing at the same level. But even a choir, the person says, okay, tenors down a little bit. I want more of the bass now. I want more of the tenors now. Sopranos up here. So it's never, ever completely balanced all the way across. You're going to have different parts that come up and down to make that beautiful masterpiece of work. And I think that our lives are a piece of artwork, masterpiece, tapestry, whatever cliche you want to throw in there, imagery. And I think that harmony is much easier to achieve than balance. So for me, I allow different parts to come up at different times. If that means I really need to focus on being a parent first, then that's where my energy goes. And I don't worry about the other parts, because this is where I need to be now. And then if I need to focus on my health, then I put the efforts there. And then for me, with the harmonizing, I just make sure that I'm doing all that I can to prepare forward, proactive as far rather than reactive. And that's how I gain harmony in my life.
And that's how you take back control of your life.
Absolutely.
Which is saying, so one of the things that you said to me was things like, there's a priority in terms of, right, the family needs nurturing, and that's going to be my priority, and that's what I'm going to focus on. And then maybe that you need to nurture money, because ultimately we have to earn money to eat and buy things. And it's that's the way that you get your alignment and control.
Yeah, get your home in order. This was a big deal when I was in the Mormon church. Get your home in order, And that could mean figuratively, that could mean your body, that could mean your relationship, but get your home in order first, and then you can start putting together the outside environmental things that you want to work on. But if those things at home, your body, mind, soul, spirit, relationships are not in place, that money mindset you talked about as well is important. If our inner workings are not aligned, then it's much harder for us to gain that harmony.
Kimberly, thank you so much for coming on today. And
Thank you so much.
I mean, it's a fascinating journey, and the way that you've been able to, in effect, control your life with so many other factors that have a kind of a pressure on you. It's amazing, and thank you.
Thank you so much. And if I could just say in closing, if there is anyone who feels limitations, whether it be chronic illness, mental health, any of those things, just know that there is a way to achieve harmony. But it starts with what Tim said, taking back control of your own life in the ways and the recipe that work for you, not everyone else. And I think that one piece, that recipe, the for you part is the most important. And just know that there's such a wide world out there. So don't let those limitations hold you back. And I hope that going forward, anyone who watched this or was watching this, took from my story that it's okay to be in the moment of what you're dealing with and know that it's temporary and that you can always move forward, whether it be kids, schooling, education, dreams, any of it. So thank you so much for having me, Tim, and putting these stories out to the world. Thank you.
And thanks for anybody that's been watching. So thank you very much.